I am 32 years old. My life until recently felt like a story that had been broken in the middle. The first part was full of light and promise. The second part was quieter, a little dimmer, but held together by a different kind of strength. The break happened 5 years ago, but on my daughter Lily's 5th birthday, the pieces started shifting, threatening to either shatter completely or finally click back into place. The party was perfect. Little girls in princess dresses ran through our backyard, their laughter like wind chimes. Balloons bobbed against the clear blue sky. My husband, Mark, was manning the grill, flipping burgers with a smile that always made me feel safe. He was my rock, the man who had held me together when my world fell apart. He looked over at me and winked, and I felt a familiar warmth spread through my chest. We had built this life, this happy, normal life from the ashes of my old one. My best friend, Chloe, was there, of course. She was more like a sister. Chloe had been beside me for everything. She held my hand when I cried for a week straight after losing my dream job. She was the one who encouraged me to go on a first date with Mark. She was Lily's godmother. Today, she was in charge of the games, leading a chaotic round of musical statues that had all the kids shrieking with delight. I watched them all, a tableau of my happy life, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. I was a graphic designer once, a rising star at a top firm. I had passion, a talent that felt like it was humming in my blood. Then, in an instant, it was gone. I was accused of stealing a major design, a career-ending allegation of corporate espionage. I was fired. I was disgraced. No one would hire me after that. The shame was a physical weight, pressing down on me for years. I eventually found a quiet job in an administrative role at a local company. It was fine. It paid the bills. But the fire in me had been put out. Mark had been my savior. He told me my career didn't define me. He said what mattered was our love, our future family. Chloe had been my cheerleader, telling me I was strong, that I would get through it. Together, they had rebuilt my confidence, not in my talent, but in my worth as a person, a wife, a mother. And looking at my beautiful daughter blowing out the 5 candles on her preliminary cupcakes, I believed it. This was enough. This life was more than enough. Later, as the afternoon sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the lawn, Chloe found me in the kitchen. I was cutting a few extra slices of watermelon. Most of the parents had started to gather their kids, the party winding down into a comfortable, happy exhaustion. Chloe leaned against the counter, her expression uncharacteristically serious. She had been drinking wine throughout the afternoon, and her cheeks were flushed. "That was a great party, Anna," she said, her voice a little thick. "We survived another one," I laughed. "Thanks for your help. I couldn't have managed that many 5-year-olds on my own." She didn't laugh back. She just stared at me, her eyes glassy with something more than just wine. It looked like guilt. A heavy, suffocating guilt. My smile faded. "Chloe, is everything okay?" I asked. She took a shaky breath. She glanced over her shoulder toward the sliding glass door where Mark was still outside, talking to the last remaining guests. She lowered her voice to a whisper, a conspiratorial hiss that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Anna, I have to tell you something," she began, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Something I should have told you a long time ago. It's about your old job, about what happened." I froze, my hand still holding the knife above the watermelon. The cheerful sounds from the backyard seemed to fade into a distant hum. It was just me and her in the suddenly silent kitchen. "What about it?" I asked, my own voice barely a whisper. She squeezed her eyes shut for a second, as if bracing herself. When she opened them, they were filled with tears. "It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some random hack," she whispered urgently. "The person who framed you. Anna, I am so sorry. I was the one who framed you." The knife slipped from my fingers and clattered onto the cutting board. My mind went completely blank. It was like a television switching to static. The words didn't make sense. Chloe. My rock. my sister, the one who had wiped my tears. It was impossible. It was a joke. A horrible, drunken, tasteless joke. Before I could form a single word, before I could even breathe, a deafening crash shattered the moment. We both flinched violently and spun around. Mark was standing just inside the doorway. His face was ashen, drained of all color. At his feet, the beautiful, custom-made Princess Castle birthday cake lay in a heap of pink frosting, crumbled towers, and shattered dreams. Lily's cake. He had dropped it. But it wasn't the cake that held my attention. It was his eyes. They were wide with a terror so profound it struck me cold. He wasn't looking at the mess on the floor. He was staring directly at Chloe, his expression one of pure, unadulterated panic. He had heard her. He had heard everything. And in that single, horrifying moment, I knew. I knew this was not just about Chloe. The immediate aftermath was a blur of frantic motion and loud, overlapping voices. Lily, seeing her ruined cake, burst into tears. A couple of the other parents rushed over, offering to help clean up the disastrous mess of frosting and sponge that was now smeared across our tile floor. Mark sprang into a flurry of activity, babbling apologies. "Oh, I am so sorry. I just tripped. My hands were slippery. Honey, I am so sorry. Lily, baby." "It's okay. Daddy will get you another cake," he said, his voice high and strained. He was overacting. The performance was too big, too loud. He wouldn't look at me. He fussed over Lily, he grabbed paper towels, he directed the cleanup operation, but he avoided my eyes completely. He was creating a smokescreen of chaos, and I knew it. I turned to look for Chloe. She was standing frozen by the counter, her face as pale as Mark's. The drunken flush was gone, replaced by a stark, sober fear. She looked like a cornered animal. When she saw me looking, she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of her head, her eyes pleading with me. She started scrubbing at a non-existent spot on the counter, her movements jerky and panicked. I should help," she mumbled, not looking at me. She grabbed a sponge and rushed over to the cake disaster, kneeling on the floor and scrubbing at the spreading pink goo with a desperate energy. No one else seemed to notice the silent, screaming tension between the three of us. To them, it was just a clumsy accident, an unfortunate end to an otherwise lovely party. To me, it was the sound of my life cracking down the middle for a second time. The last of the guests left, offering sympathetic words. "Don't worry about the cake," one of the moms said, patting my arm. "Kids are resilient. She'll forget all about it by tomorrow." I doubted I would ever forget. Once the door closed on the last guest, a heavy silence fell over the house. The only sound was Lily's quiet sniffling from the living room, where she was watching a cartoon, a consolation prize for her ruined birthday centerpiece. Mark continued to clean the floor with an obsessive focus, scrubbing at tiles that were already clean. Chloe stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "I should probably get going," she said, her voice thin. "It's getting late." "No," I said. The word was quiet but hard as a stone. Both she and Mark froze. "You're not going anywhere. We need to talk." Chloe's eyes darted to Mark, a quick, terrified glance. "Anna, I was just drunk," she said, forcing a weak, unconvincing laugh. "You know how I get. I was just talking nonsense. I don't even remember what I said." "I do," I replied, my voice dangerously calm. "I remember every word." Mark finally stood up, throwing a wad of sticky paper towels into the trash can with a thud. "Honey, let it go," he said, stepping between me and Chloe, physically blocking my path to her. "She's right. She was just babbling. Let's not ruin Lily's birthday any more than I already have." He was protecting her. Or maybe he was protecting himself. The way he positioned his body was deliberate, a human shield. He was managing the situation, controlling me just as he had done for years. Only now, the support felt like a cage. That night, after I put a still subdued Lily to bed, I found Mark in our bedroom. He was pretending to read a book, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. The way he held the book so tightly his knuckles were white. The air was thick with unspoken words. I stood in the doorway, my arms crossed. We need to talk about what happened today. He sighed, closing the book but not looking at me. Anna, there's nothing to talk about. I dropped a cake. Chloe got drunk. It was a stressful day. Stop it, Mark, I said, my voice shaking with a cold anger I hadn't felt in years. Stop lying to me. I saw your face when you dropped that cake. You weren't just upset about the mess. You were terrified. You heard what she said to me. He finally looked at me, and his expression was one of practiced patience, the same look he used to give me when I would get emotional about my lost career. It was condescending. It was the look of a man trying to handle a hysterical woman. I heard a crash, that's all, he said smoothly. I was coming in to tell you what a great job you did, and I tripped. I was horrified that I ruined the one thing Lily was looking forward to all day. That's it. You're reading way too much into this. And Chloe? I pressed, stepping further into the room. She confesses to ruining my entire life and then suddenly claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue? Does that sound plausible to you? Frankly, yes, he said, his voice turning cold. It sounds exactly like Chloe. She gets emotional, she exaggerates. You know that. You're letting her drunken rambling get to you, and you're letting your imagination run wild. You need to calm down and be rational. He was gaslighting me. Using my past trauma, the emotional fragility I had shown in the aftermath of my firing, against me. He was painting me as unstable, irrational. The old me, the broken me, might have believed him. I might have doubted my own perceptions, apologized for being overly emotional. But I wasn't that person anymore. Something had hardened in me the moment that cake hit the floor. I saw the fear in his eyes, and it had acted like a clarifying agent, cutting through the fog of the past 5 years. I am calm, Mark, I said, my voice dropping to a low, steady tone that made him flinch. And I am rational, and I know that both of you are lying to me. He stared at me for a long moment, his mask of concern slipping to reveal a flash of irritation. Fine, he snapped. Believe what you want. I'm tired. I'm going to sleep. He turned his back on me, pulling the covers up to his shoulder in a clear, final dismissal. I stood there in the silence of the room, the space between us a vast, cold canyon. He thought this was over. He thought he could shut it down, just like he had shut down my attempts to find justice 5 years ago. He was wrong. This was just the beginning. I left the room and walked into my home office. I closed the door, sat down at my desk, and for the first time in 5 years, I opened the files related to the Aperture project. The fight I had given up on was back on. And this time, I wasn't just fighting for my career. I was fighting for the truth of my own life. The next morning, I called Chloe. I waited until I knew Mark had left for work, watching his car pull out of the driveway before I picked up the phone. My heart was hammering against my ribs. I had to play this carefully. She answered on the third ring, her voice small and tentative. Hello? Chloe, it's Anna, I said, keeping my tone neutral. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. Hi, she finally squeaked. I need you to tell me what's going on, I said directly. And don't tell me you were just drunk. I know that's not true. Anna, please, she begged, her voice cracking. Just drop it. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have said anything. Please, for the sake of our friendship, just let it go. For the sake of our friendship? The words were so absurd they almost made me laugh. What friendship? The one where she stood by my side after stabbing me in the back? Our friendship is the reason you need to tell me the truth, I countered, putting a deliberate edge in my voice. You owe me that much, don't you think? I can't, she whispered. You don't understand. Then make me understand, I pushed. What am I not understanding, Chloe? Did you do it or not? There was another long, agonizing silence. I could picture her on the other end of the line, wringing her hands, her face pale with panic. She was the weak link. Mark was a fortress of denial, but Chloe was crumbling. "I can't talk about this on the phone," she finally said. I I have to go. I have a meeting." She hung up before I could say another word. The click of the phone felt like a door slamming in my face, but it wasn't a total loss. Her panic was a confession in itself. She hadn't denied it. She had just refused to talk about it. She was scared. But what was she scared of? Was she scared of me? Or was she scared of Mark? I leaned back in my chair. The old case files spread out before me. The official story was simple and damning. A series of anonymous emails containing proprietary design elements from the Aperture project were sent to a senior executive at a rival firm, Omnitech. The emails were traced to a public library computer. A security camera in the library captured a blurry image of a woman in a hoodie, her face obscured. The library was 2 blocks from the apartment I lived in at the time. It was all circumstantial, but my company, terrified of a lawsuit from our client, needed a scapegoat. I was the lead designer. I was the perfect scapegoat. I stared at the grainy security camera still. For 5 years, I had looked at that image and seen a stranger, a faceless monster who had ruined my life. Now, I looked at it and I tried to picture Chloe. The hoodie, the way she held her shoulders. It was impossible to tell. But then I remembered something else. A small detail. A conversation I hadn't thought about in years. My home internet had been out for 2 days that week. I had been complaining about it to Chloe on the phone. I had a small freelance project I needed to finish, completely unrelated to my work at the firm. "You should go to the Northwood Library," Chloe had said. "They have a brand new fiber optic line. It's super fast, much better than that coffee shop you always go to." I had taken her advice. I went to the Northwood Library. I finished my freelance work and went home. The anonymous emails were sent from that same library the very next day. A cold dread seeped into my bones. She hadn't just known my schedule. She had directed me. She had placed me at the scene of the crime. The knowledge was so sickening I had to stand up and walk around the room, breathing deeply. This wasn't a spontaneous act of jealousy. This was planned. And what about Mark? My mind raced back, replaying his behavior during that time. When the accusation first surfaced, I was hysterical. Yes, but I was also defiant. I wanted to fight. I wanted to hire a private investigator, a lawyer who specialized in this stuff. I was adamant that we could find the real culprit. "Anna, we can't afford that," Mark had said, his voice full of gentle reason. "A good lawyer will cost a fortune. And what if you lose? We'll be in debt for years, and dragging this out will only make it worse. It will make you look desperate, like you have something to hide." Every time I brought it up, he had a reason why it was a bad idea. He framed it as concern for my well-being, for our financial stability. He told me the best thing to do was to accept the severance package, sign the non-disclosure agreement, and move on. "Let's focus on us," he'd said. "We can start fresh." I had listened to him. I had trusted him. He was my partner, my future husband. I believed he had my best interests at heart. Now, his support felt like a calculated strategy to ensure the truth remained buried. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting the secret. My hands were shaking as I sat back down at the desk. I needed more than just a gut feeling and a half-remembered conversation. I needed proof. Hard proof. If Mark and Chloe had done this together, they would have had to communicate. They would have had to plan. They might have been careful, but people always make mistakes. I started with our finances. Mark's excuse for not hiring a lawyer was that we were broke. He had told me he'd racked up some credit card debt and was struggling to pay it off. I had accepted it without question, too consumed by my own crisis to scrutinize our bank accounts. Now, I logged into our online banking portal. I went back 5 years, navigating the clunky interface to the exact month I was fired. I scrolled through the transactions, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and grim determination. Rent, utilities, groceries, the usual. And then I saw it. A single large cash withdrawal from our joint savings account. $5,000. It was dated 1 week after I was officially terminated. The description simply said, ATM withdrawal. I stared at the number. $5,000. That wasn't some credit card debt. That was a significant amount of money for us back then. It had nearly emptied our savings. I had no memory of this withdrawal. I would have remembered taking out that much cash. It had to have been Mark. Where did that money go? My mind was racing, trying to connect the dots. A frame-up, a secret withdrawal of a large sum of cash, a best friend and a husband working in concert to suppress any investigation. It was starting to form a picture, an ugly, twisted masterpiece of betrayal. I needed to know what that money was for. But I couldn't ask Mark directly. He would know I was investigating. I had to be smarter than that. I had to be more calculated. I had to become the detective he had never allowed me to hire. Later that evening, I decided to test him. I found him in the living room, watching television. I sat down on the other end of the couch, creating a deliberate distance between us. Hey, I said casually. I was just looking through some old bank statements for a tax thing. It's funny what you forget, isn't it? He grunted, his eyes still on the screen. Yeah, I guess. I saw this one thing from way back, around the time I lost my job. I continued, keeping my voice light. You mentioned you were in some debt back then. I saw a big withdrawal. Was that you paying it off? He stiffened. It was subtle, but I saw it. The muscles in his neck tightened. He muted the television and turned to look at me. His eyes narrowed. Why are you digging through 5-year-old bank statements, Anna? He asked, his voice low and suspicious. Like I said, a tax thing. I lied smoothly. I just saw the number and it seemed like a lot. I was just curious what it was for. I don't remember us talking about it. It was credit card debt, he said curtly. I was embarrassed about it. I took care of it and I didn't want to worry you, especially with everything you were going through. It's old news. Why are you bringing it up now? His defensiveness was a blaring alarm. He was shutting me down again, making me feel like I was prying, like I was in the wrong for even asking. No reason, I said, shrugging as if it didn't matter. Just a random memory. It's not a big deal. I stood up and left the room, but I could feel his eyes on my back. He knew something was up. The battle lines were being drawn, even if he didn't know the full extent of my suspicions yet. The next day, I focused my attention back on Omnitech, the rival company. The company that had supposedly received the stolen designs. What had happened to them? A quick internet search gave me the answer. Omnitech had been acquired by a much larger corporation, a company called Sterling Coal, about a year after the incident. Their old employees were likely scattered to the winds. Finding someone who remembered a minor corporate espionage case from 6 years prior seemed like a long shot. But I had to try. I spent hours on LinkedIn, searching for former Omnitech employees who had been there during that specific time frame. I cross-referenced names with old tech news articles about the company. Finally, I found a promising lead, a man named David Chen. His profile listed him as a senior project manager at Omnitech during the exact years of the incident. His current status was retired. He seemed perfect. A retired employee would have no corporate loyalty. He might be willing to talk. My hands trembled as I typed out a message. I had to be careful. I couldn't sound like a woman on a revenge mission. I had to sound like a researcher, someone detached and professional. Dear Mr. Chen, I wrote, my name is Anna. I am doing some independent research on corporate acquisitions in the tech sector from the mid-2010s. I came across the Sterling Coal acquisition of Omnitech and was particularly interested in a project from around that time called the Aperture Project. I know it's a long shot, but I was wondering if you might have any recollections about that project or the circumstances surrounding it. Any information you could provide would be immensely helpful for my research. I read it over 10 times, tweaking the wording until it sounded bland and academic enough. I hit send, my heart pounding. It was a message in a bottle, thrown into the vast ocean of the internet. All I could do was wait and hope it found the right shore. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I checked my LinkedIn messages obsessively, my stomach twisting into a knot every time I saw an empty inbox. Mark was watching me. I could feel his gaze on me when I was on my computer, when I took a phone call. He was being extra attentive, constantly asking me what I was doing, who I was talking to. His concern, which once felt loving, now felt like surveillance. "You've been on your computer a lot lately," he said one evening as I was shutting my laptop down. "Everything okay?" "Just catching up on some personal projects," I said vaguely. "Getting my digital life organized." "That's good," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just make sure you're not dwelling on the past. It's not healthy." He was warning me. It was a veiled threat wrapped in the language of care. Don't dig. Don't look. Forget. On the third day, a notification popped up on my phone. "You have a new message on LinkedIn." My breath caught in my throat. I hurried into my office and closed the door before opening the app. The message was from David Chen. "Dear Anna," it read. "I remember the Aperture project. That was a strange one. I'd be happy to tell you what I know. It's not a story you'd find in any official company history. I am free to chat on the phone tomorrow afternoon if that works for you." He included his phone number. I stared at the message, a wave of triumph washing over me. This was it. This was the first real break. Someone from the other side was willing to talk. The phone call with David Chen changed everything. I waited until I was completely alone in the house, the silence amplifying the frantic beating of my own heart. I rehearsed my opening lines, wanting to sound calm and professional, not like a woman whose life was hanging on his every word. "Mr. Chen, this is Anna. Thank you so much for agreeing to speak with me," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "Please call me David," he replied. His voice was warm and grandfatherly. "It's not often someone asks me about the old days at Omnitech. The Aperture project, you said?" "Yes, I remember it well. It was a thorn in my side for about a month." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, gripping the pen in my hand. "Well, the whole thing was a sham," he said bluntly. I nearly dropped the pen. "We received this supposed leak from your old firm. A bunch of design files. It came from an anonymous source who claimed to be a disgruntled employee over there. My boss at the time, a real shark named Fletcher, jumped all over it. He thought it was his golden ticket." "So Omnitech used the designs?" I asked, my voice tight. David laughed, a dry, wheezing sound. "Heavens, no, that's the strange part. We couldn't use them. Legally, they were poison. And frankly, between you and me, the designs themselves were incomplete. They were more like early-stage concepts, not a finished product. They were useless to us." Useless. The designs they had accused me of stealing, the designs that had cost me my reputation and my career, were useless. The injustice of it was a fresh, sharp pain. "Then, what was the point?" I stammered. "Why would anyone go to the trouble of leaking them?" "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?" David said. "Fletcher didn't care. His goal wasn't to use the designs. His goal was to sabotage your company's project. He made sure the client found out about the leak. It caused a huge scandal. Your firm lost the contract, and Omnitech swooped in and pitched a brand new proposal to the client a month later. It was a classic corporate sabotage play. Dirty, but effective." My head was spinning. This wasn't just about a stolen design. It was a deliberate, malicious plot to torpedo a multi-million-dollar project. The theft was just the weapon. I was the collateral damage. "You said the leak came from an anonymous source?" I said, forcing myself to focus. "Did anyone at Omnitech ever have contact with this source?" "Oh, yes," David said, and this was the part that made my blood run cold. Fletcher handled it personally. He was very secretive about it. But he bragged to me once after a few too many drinks at a company dinner. He said he didn't get the tip for free. He said he paid an informant for it, a middleman." "He paid someone?" I whispered. "That's what he said. Paid them a few $1,000s in cash to make the introduction to the leaker and to legitimize the whole thing. It was all very shady. The informant was someone with a connection to your firm, apparently. That's how he knew the leak was credible. A few $1,000s. Cash. My mind flashed to the $5,000 withdrawal from my savings account. The number wasn't just a coincidence. It was a price. The price of my career. David, I said, my voice shaking. This informant, did Fletcher ever mention a name? Or who they worked for? No, never a name. Fletcher was too smart for that. But he did let one thing slip. He said the guy he paid was the cousin of someone important at your firm. That's why he trusted him. Family connection, you know? The cousin of someone important. My mind started racing. Who at my old firm had a cousin working at Omnitech? No, that wasn't right. David had said the informant had a connection to my firm. The cousin was the one who got paid. And then it hit me. A sickening bolt of lightning. Mark's cousin. Peter. Peter had worked a boring accounting job at some mid-level tech company back then. I had never paid much attention. But was it Omnitech? It had to be. Mark, my Mark, had used our savings to pay his own cousin to help destroy my life. Thank you, David, I said, my voice hoarse. You have no idea how much this has helped me. Glad I could be of service, he said kindly. It always felt wrong. What happened to that designer over there? Seemed like they got a raw deal. I hope your research shed some light on it. After I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The pieces weren't just fitting together anymore. They were locking into place with a horrifying certainty. Mark's jealousy of my success, his feeling of being left behind, Chloe's unrequited love for him and her own potential envy. It was a toxic cocktail of motives. Mark was the architect. He conceived of the plan to slow me down. He brought in a desperate and lovelorn Chloe to be his pawn, to send the email and create the evidence. And he used his own cousin, Peter, as the paid informant inside the rival company, using our money to seal the deal. He had built a cage around me, and for 5 years I had called it a home. He had systematically dismantled my confidence, my career, and my trust in the world, and then presented himself as my only safe harbor. The betrayal was so deep, so monstrous, it was almost incomprehensible. I looked at a photo on my desk. It was of me and Mark on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of hope. I felt a surge of cold, hard rage. He had not only stolen my past, he had turned my entire present into a lie. My marriage, my trust, the very foundation of my family. It was all built on this devastating secret. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, feeling the warmth of Mark's body next to me, and I felt nothing but ice in my veins. He was a stranger, a monster sleeping beside me. I watched the slow rise and fall of his chest, and I thought about his cousin, Peter. I did a quick search on my phone. Sure enough, Peter's old LinkedIn profile confirmed it. He had been a junior accountant at Omnitech for 2 years, the exact period of the incident. The last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I had the motive, I had the means, I had the money trail, I had the inside source. All I was missing was the one thing that could bring it all crashing down. A confession. And I knew just how to get it. Chloe was my only way in. She was the one who had started this by cracking. I just needed to give her one final push. The next morning, I composed another message, this time to Chloe. It was not a request. It was a summons. Chloe, I wrote. I know everything. I know about Mark. I know about the $5,000. I even know about his cousin Peter. We are going to talk. Today. You will meet me at the park at noon. If you are not there, I will assume you want me to share what I've learned with your boss. I hear that new promotion in the ethics department requires a spotless record. I hit send. There was no turning back now. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the architect of their downfall. And the first stone was about to be laid. Chloe was waiting for me on a park bench. huddled into herself as if it were a cold winter day instead of a mild autumn afternoon. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red-rimmed and darted around nervously, as if she expected Mark to leap out from behind a tree. I sat down on the other end of the bench, leaving a wide space between us. I didn't say anything. I just waited. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she broke. "How did you find out?" she whispered, her voice raspy. "It doesn't matter how," I said, my voice flat and cold. "I know. Now I want to hear it from you. All of it. The truth. No more lies." Tears began to stream down her face, silent and miserable. "I am so sorry, Anna," she choked out. "I never wanted this to happen. I never wanted to destroy you." "Then why did you do it?" I asked, my voice devoid of the sympathy she was so clearly fishing for. "Why would you do that to me, Chloe? I thought you were my best friend." "I was," she sobbed, "but I was also stupid. And I was in love with Mark." The words hung in the air between us. I had suspected it, but hearing her say it aloud was still a shock. It recontextualized years of our friendship, casting a sordid light on every shared secret, every piece of advice. "He came to me," she continued, staring at her hands, which were twisted together in her lap. "He was so unhappy. Your career was taking off. You were getting all this attention, winning awards. He felt like you were in a different world, a world he couldn't reach. He said he was afraid of losing you." "So he decided to sabotage me?" I asked, my voice dripping with disbelief. "That was his solution? To cripple my career so I would need him more?" She nodded miserably. "He said it wasn't supposed to be permanent. He just wanted to slow you down. Create a small setback so you would turn to him, so you would remember that he was the most important thing. He swore it wouldn't get you fired. He said they would just put you on probation or move you to a different project." "He lied to you too, then," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "He knew exactly what would happen." "I didn't know about Peter," she said desperately, finally looking at me, her eyes pleading for some kind of understanding. "I swear I didn't know about the money or his cousin. He just told me what to do. He gave me the files on a USB drive. He told me which library to go to and what to write in the email. I was the one who sat at that computer. I was the one who wore the hoodie. But the plan, the real plan, that was all him. I was just his tool." Her words painted a pathetic picture. A woman so desperate for a man's affection that she would betray her best friend. I felt a flicker of pity, but it was quickly extinguished by the cold flame of my anger. Her weakness, her desperation, had cost me 5 years of my life. "And afterwards?" I pressed. "For 5 years you watched me suffer. You held my hand. You told me I was strong. You played the part of the devoted friend. How could you live with yourself?" "It was torture," she whispered. "Every day, seeing you, seeing what I had done to you, it was eating me alive. And Mark, once you two got married, he made it clear. We were never to speak of it again. He said if I ever told you, he would deny everything and paint me as a crazy, jealous liar. He said I would lose everything and you wouldn't even believe me. He had me trapped. So that was it. He had used her and then discarded her, holding the threat of exposure over her head to ensure her silence. He had controlled both of us, two sides of the same manipulative coin. "Tell me about the cake," I said suddenly. She looked confused. "The cake?" "At the party, when you confessed. Mark dropped the cake. He heard you, didn't he?" She nodded slowly. "I think so. I saw him in the doorway just as I said it. He had this look on his face. I've never seen him so scared. Dropping the cake was just panic." It all fit. The entire ugly, sordid puzzle was complete. I had everything I needed. I reached into my pocket and my fingers brushed against my phone. I had started the voice recorder app the moment I sat down on the bench. Her entire confession, Mark's motive, her role, his control over her. It was all there, captured in a digital file. It was the key, the weapon I had been searching for. "Thank you for your honesty, Chloe," I said, my voice chillingly polite. I stood up. She looked up at me, a flicker of hope in her tear-filled eyes. "Does this mean... Can you ever forgive me?" I looked down at the woman who had once been my closest confidant. I saw the years of shared laughter, of secrets, of support, all of it tainted by this one monstrous act of betrayal. Forgiveness wasn't a currency I was willing to trade in. Justice was the only thing that mattered now. "Forgiveness is not on the table," I said calmly. "What happens next depends entirely on you. You will say nothing to Mark. You will act as if this conversation never happened. You will go about your life. Do you understand?" She nodded numbly, her face ashen. She understood the unspoken threat. I owned her now. Her career, her reputation, it was all in my hands. The power dynamic had been irrevocably reversed. I turned and walked away without another word, leaving her weeping on the park bench. I didn't look back. I had a plan to formulate, a stage to set. Mark had wanted to make me small so he could feel big. He was about to find out what it felt like to be truly cut down to size, and I was going to make sure it happened in front of everyone he ever cared about. The stage for Mark's downfall presented itself perfectly. His parents, David and Eleanor, were celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. They were hosting a formal dinner at an upscale restaurant, a private room filled with their closest friends and family. Mark's entire world would be there, his proud parents, his siblings, his aunts, uncles, and cousins, including Peter. Mark had been trying to get back in my good graces all week. He was on his best behavior, showering me with compliments, buying me flowers, constantly telling me how much he loved me. He thought his wall of denial had worked. He thought I had accepted his lies and moved on. He had no idea he was a dead man walking. The night of the party, I dressed carefully. I chose a simple, elegant red dress, a power color. I felt a strange, icy calm settle over me as we drove to the restaurant. Mark was chattering happily beside me, pointing out landmarks, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break over his head. "You look beautiful tonight, Anna," he said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. His touch felt like a spider crawling on my skin. I forced a smile. "You look very handsome too, honey," I said, playing my part. The restaurant was beautiful, the private room filled with the soft clinking of glasses and the low murmur of happy conversation. Mark's parents greeted us at the door, beaming. "Anna, you look stunning," Eleanor said, hugging me tightly. "We are so glad you both could be here." "Of course," I said, smiling warmly at her. "We wouldn't miss it for the world." I scanned the room, and there he was, Peter, standing by the bar, looking paunchy and self-satisfied in a suit that was a little too tight. He caught my eye and gave me a vapid, familiar smile. He had no idea who I was, what I knew. To him, I was just his cousin's quiet, unassuming wife. The dinner was long. Course after course was served. Toasts were made. People shared fond memories of David and Eleanor. I sat beside Mark, smiling, laughing at the right moments, playing the role of the supportive wife to perfection. Mark was in his element, holding court at our end of the table, basking in the warmth of his family's affection. He felt safe here. He felt untouchable. That was exactly what I wanted. Finally, after dessert was served, David stood up to give his final thanks. After his speech, as people were beginning to mingle again, I stood up, tapping my glass with a spoon. A hush fell over the room. "If I could have your attention for just a moment," I said, my voice clear and steady. "I'd also like to say a few words." All eyes turned to me. Mark looked at me, a proud, indulgent smile on his face. He probably thought I was going to give a sappy, heartfelt speech about his wonderful parents. "I'd like to make a toast," I began, raising my glass. "To my husband, Mark." He beamed, puffing out his chest slightly. His mother, Eleanor, looked at him with pure adoration. Everyone here knows Mark as a wonderful son, a loving brother, and a devoted husband, I continued, my eyes locked on his. And he has been particularly supportive of me, especially during the hard times. Like 5 years ago when my career fell apart after I was falsely accused of corporate espionage. A few uncomfortable murmurs rippled through the room. It was not a topic for a happy celebration. Mark's smile tightened at the edges. He was starting to get nervous. But I recently discovered something incredible, I said, my voice taking on a sharp, bright edge. I found out that my husband was far more involved in that situation than I ever knew. He wasn't just my support system. He was the architect of the entire thing. Weren't you, Mark? The smile vanished from his face. It was replaced by a look of stunned disbelief, then dawning horror. The entire room was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. I turned my gaze slowly, deliberately, to his cousin. And you too, Peter. You were involved as well. I imagine that $5,000 in cash was very useful for a junior accountant back then, wasn't it? Peter, who had been lifting a glass of champagne to his lips, froze. The color drained from his face. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Mark shot to his feet, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. What are you talking about? He snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl. Are you out of your mind? His mother, Eleanor, rushed to his side. Anna, what is the meaning of this? How dare you make such horrible accusations at our party? I dare because it's the truth, I said calmly, holding my ground. The entire room was staring at me, their expressions a mixture of shock, confusion, and dawning suspicion. She's crazy, Mark shouted, his voice escalating into a panicked roar. He pointed a shaking finger at me. She's always been unstable about losing that job. She's making it all up. She's trying to ruin this night. He was falling back on his old script. The hysterical, irrational woman. But this time, I had an audience. And I had proof. Am I? I asked, my voice cutting through his tirade. I don't think so. You see, I have a confession. A full confession. From your accomplice. I pulled my phone out of my clutch purse. Mark's eyes widened in terror. He knew. He knew instantly who I meant. I wouldn't do this, Mark, I said quietly, but you left me no choice. I found the audio file. His father, David, was now on his feet, his face a grim mask. Anna, what is this all about? It's about your son, David, I said, my eyes still on Mark. It's about the fact that he was so pathologically jealous of my success that he paid his own cousin to help a woman I thought was my best friend frame me and systematically destroy my career. Also, I would be more dependent on him. Lies, Mark screamed, his face contorted with fury. It's all lies. Then you won't mind if I play this, I said, and I pressed play. Chloe's voice, shaky and full of tears, filled the silent room. Mark was so jealous of you. He came to me. He said he just wanted to slow you down. He gave me the files on a USB drive. He told me which library to go to. The plan. The real plan. That was all him. I let it play for a full 30 seconds. 30 seconds of pure, unadulterated truth. The effect was instantaneous. A collective gasp went through the room. Eleanor looked from my phone to her son's face, her own expression crumbling in horror. David's face was like thunder. Mark let out a guttural roar of fury and lunged for me, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. Give me that. But his father was faster. David, a man I had only known as gentle and soft-spoken, moved with surprising speed. He grabbed Mark's arm in an iron grip, stopping him cold. Mark, stop it, David commanded, his voice booming with an authority I had never heard before. He looked into his son's wild eyes. Is it true? Tell me, is what she said true? Mark stared at his father, his chest heaving. He looked around the room at the shocked and horrified faces of his family. his friends. He looked at Peter, who was pale and sweating, staring at the floor, offering no denial, no support. He was cornered. He was exposed. There was nowhere left to run. His shoulders slumped in defeat. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence was the final damning confession. The perfect family man, the loving husband, the pride of the family was a fraud, and his entire world had just watched him burn. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I had done what I came to do. As the room descended into a chaotic mess of angry, shocked whispers and Eleanor's first heartbroken sobs, I calmly placed my phone back in my purse. I looked at Mark one last time. He was standing there, held in place by his father's grip, his face a mask of utter devastation. He had been rendered small, pathetic, and powerless. It was exactly what he deserved. Without a word to anyone, I turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving the smoldering wreckage of his life behind me. I didn't feel triumph. Not yet. I just felt a profound, cleansing emptiness. The heavy weight I had been carrying for 5 years was finally gone. I was free. The next day, my phone rang. It was David, Mark's father. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. His voice was heavy with exhaustion and shame. "Anna," he said, I don't know what to say. I am so deeply, truly sorry for what my son did to you. There are no words." "Thank you, David," I said quietly. "I appreciate you calling." "He told us everything," David continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "Last night, after you left, the jealousy, the money, Peter's involvement, all of it. My wife and I, we are horrified. We are so ashamed. We raised him better than that." I remained silent, letting him speak. This was his shame to process, not mine to soothe. "We have talked and we have made some decisions," he said, his voice firming with resolve. "Mark will be paying you back. We are going to calculate your lost wages with interest for the past 5 years. It will be a substantial amount. We will sell one of our properties if we have to. You will be made financially whole." "That is not negotiable." I was stunned. I hadn't expected this. "As for Peter," he went on, his voice turning to ice, "he is no longer a part of this family. He will receive nothing from us ever again. He has brought shame upon us all, and he will have to live with that." "What about Mark?" I asked, my voice even. David sighed, a long, ragged sound. "He is our son. We can't disown him, but he will be living under our roof and under our rules. He has a lot of work to do on himself, a lot of atonement. What you do, what you decide about your marriage, that is entirely your decision. We will support you, no matter what." I thanked him again and ended the call. His words were a balm, but they didn't change my resolve. Financial restitution was justice, but it wasn't a cure for the betrayal. Later that afternoon, Mark called. His number flashed on my screen, and I felt a flicker of the old, conditioned anxiety, which I quickly crushed with a new, cold resolve. I answered. "Anna?" His voice was a wreck. He was crying. "Anna, please, don't do this. Don't leave me. I can't lose you and Lily. I love you so much." The words, which once would have melted my heart, now sounded hollow and pathetic. They were the desperate pleas of a man who had been caught, not the sincere remorse of a man who was sorry for what he had done. "I was so stupid, so insecure," he sobbed. "I was a kid. I made a horrible mistake. But I'm not that person anymore. We can get through this. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything." "No, Mark, we can't," I said, my voice as calm and final as a judge's gavel. "This wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to take out the trash. You systematically and maliciously conspired to ruin my life. You gaslighted me for 5 years. You let me believe I was broken. You let me thank you for saving me from a fire you started. There is no coming back from that. Please, Anna," he begged. "We are done. I said, cutting him off. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce and about custody of Lily. I hung up before he could respond. I immediately blocked his number. Then I called my lawyer and made an appointment for the next day. The divorce was happening. There was no question. Next, I had to deal with Chloe. She called me an hour later, her voice frantic and terrified. Anna? What did you do? She shrieked into the phone. Mark's family knows. He called me screaming. Did you tell them about me? Am I going to lose my job? Her panic was a symphony to my ears. For the first time, she was feeling a fraction of the terror I had felt 5 years ago. No, Chloe, I said, savoring the power in my voice. I only exposed Mark and Peter. Your name was not mentioned to his family. As far as they know, the accomplice remains anonymous. She let out a huge, shuddering sigh of relief. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Anna. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said, my voice turning to steel. This isn't a gift. It's a leash. I still have the recording of our conversation. Your secret is safe, for now. But we are not friends. We will never be friends again. You will stay out of my life. You will stay away from my daughter, and you will never contact me again. If you do, or if I ever hear of you causing trouble for anyone else, I will not hesitate to forward that recording to your company's CEO. Do you understand me? Yes, she whispered, her voice trembling. I understand. Good, I said, and I hung up. I deleted her number from my phone. She was a ghost now, a ghost who would live in constant fear of my judgment. It was a fitting punishment. There was one final piece of business. With the recording of Chloe's confession and a signed affidavit from David Chen, who was more than willing to help, I contacted my old firm. I didn't ask for a meeting with HR. I went straight to the top. I sent an email to the current CEO, a man who had been the head of my department back then. I laid out the entire story, attaching the evidence. I didn't make demands. I just presented the undeniable truth. He called me back within the hour. He was appalled, apologetic, and furious on my behalf. Anna, I am speechless, he said. To think this happened under our noses? That we did this to you? It's unacceptable. We are launching a full internal review. But more importantly, I want to right this wrong. The job is yours if you want it. Your old position. No, better. A promotion. Senior Creative Director. And we will be issuing you a check for 5 years of back pay, on top of whatever you get from your ex-husband. It's the least we can do. I felt a surge of emotion so powerful it almost knocked me off my feet. It was vindication. Pure, absolute vindication. I accept, I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. Thank you. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. The divorce was finalized quickly and cleanly. Mark, under pressure from his family, didn't fight me on anything. I got full custody of Lily, the house, and a substantial settlement that, combined with the back pay from my company and the money from Mark's parents, left me more financially secure than I had ever been. I moved back into the world of design as if I had never left. The fire I thought had been extinguished was just dormant. It roared back to life, stronger and brighter than before. I was good at my job. I was brilliant at it. And now I had a confidence that couldn't be shaken. Every now and then, I would hear things. Mark was living in his parents' basement, a disgraced 33-year-old man working a menial job, his ambition and charm gone, replaced by a sullen bitterness. Peter had been fired from his job after his own company heard rumors of what he had done. Chloe got her promotion, but a mutual acquaintance told me she was a nervous wreck, constantly looking over her shoulder, a shadow of her former self. One afternoon, about a year later, I was in the grocery store with Lily. As I was reaching for a carton of milk, I saw him. It was Mark. He looked awful. He had lost weight, his clothes were rumpled, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired and small. He saw me and his eyes widened. He took a hesitant step toward me, a pathetic, hopeful look on his face. Anna? I met his gaze for a single, cold second. I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, not even pity. He was just a stranger, a ghost from a life I no longer lived. I turned my back on him, put the milk in my cart, and pushed it down the aisle without a second glance. I could feel his eyes on my back, but I didn't care. He had spent 5 years trying to make me feel small so he could feel big. He had built my life around a lie to feed his own ego. But in the end, I had reclaimed my story. I was a senior creative director. I was a mother. I was a survivor. And he was just a sad man in a grocery store, left behind in the ruins of the life he had tried to steal from me. The best revenge wasn't the fiery confrontation. It was the quiet, absolute indifference of my success. He had finally learned what it felt like to be insignificant. And I never gave him another thought.